Welcome back to the M&M podcast. Today we will be discussing all things sitcoms. Alex, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. I'm good, Mitch. Different locale today. I got a
Yeah,
different camera, as you can see.
full
It's a
body
little
shot
different.
this time.
Little body shot. You can see little
Yeah,
everything. And I got my little coffee stein here. So
yeah, definitely no Baileys in that, is there?
no, actually, not today.
Not
This
today.
morning, yes, but for the podcast, no.
All right. Well, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or bad thing, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe we'll have to do a drunk episode sometime. But
Oh, that sounds good. Pin it. Everybody comment. See if
yeah.
we should do a junk episode. There you go.
Oh boy. I wonder what we would discuss. We already did Batman. That might have been a good
The
one.
drunk. We're gonna talk about Batman.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I'm sure we wouldn't have trouble finding a topic for that, but maybe you
Mhm.
know what? Maybe we could just do our Doobie Brothers episode, just like obscure bands that we like that no one else really knows, something like that
Mhm.
when we're around. But let's get back to today's topic, which is sitcoms. And
Mhm.
I think one thing about sitcoms that still exists today, actually, although to a lesser extent, sitcoms have been the backbone of cable television or satellite television, basically just pre-streaming or non-streaming conventional television services outside of sports. Obviously, sports is the thing that keeps that in business. But in terms of like a network program, I think sitcoms are probably one of, if not the main driver of people who still use kind of cable or satellite TV, particularly maybe like older people or just people in general who
Mhm.
aren't as technologically inclined. And one of the big kind of innovations in terms of the modern sitcom would be the multicam sitcom. And as someone who is not a film or television technical expert, I have no idea what that means. So I will send it over to you, my film major friend, to explain the multicam sitcom, maybe give a couple examples.
Perfect. And I do know about this. So multi-cam sitcoms is they this is how the sitcom started out with older ones like see Seinfeld and Frasier. You see it and all the way till nowadays because it keeps working. And like you were saying, it was a staple in the network's backbone. And they're just films because they're easy to shoot. There's not a like big effects and stuff. You're paying mostly actors and writers, right? That's and producers. But
Mhm.
with multicam, like an example is like the Big Bang Theory. Like Big Bang, that's more of like a modern multicam sitcom. So Big Bang, How I Met Your Mother, Friends. You see these big shows, big network shows. What happens is they do multiple camera angles. So instead of doing, and you know how like in film, like you'll shoot one angle, then cut and shoot the other. So just the illusion of continuity, right? Keeping it
Mhm.
going. But with this multicam show, it's performed in front of a live audience usually. So instead of them sitting through like take after take of the same thing but different angles, they do multiple angles so the actors can get them in like less takes. So you keep that like laughter fresh and stuff like that because they'll record the audience and then they'll like augment it and just like put it in post and make it like louder for laugh
Mhm.
tracks and stuff. Um,
That makes
that's kind
sense.
of the essential.
Yeah, because like that's something like tape making movies is so tedious. Like you'll be filming a scene and it just takes hours, if not days, for a couple minute scene because it's
Oh yeah.
like you have the camera set here for this sequence and then it's there even though you're filming the same exact scene, like even the same exact part of the scene, they just want to get like different angles, right, to kind of see how it'll work when it's all like edited together. But obviously that multicam sitcom, so that's basically just what sitcoms are for the most part, in terms of ones that are like at a like in a studio sort of thing with a live
Yeah.
audience and laugh track. So like you mentioned, Seinfeld, Big Bang, How I Met Your Mother, kind of those type of shows, as opposed to like shows that were filmed kind of on a at some sort of like setting, like The Office. You know, it's actually in an office now. I believe it's still obviously part of like some sort of studio, but it still is like an actual office. It's not like there's room, some hidden area where people are watching and behind the scenes and that. Um,
Yeah.
but I guess that we could kind of talk about something that maybe divides people in terms of sitcoms, particularly with the multicam sitcom, which would be a laugh track.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not really, well, I was going to say I'm not really sure what it adds, but I think it's kind of an indictment on the audience, maybe, just in terms of like they want people to know when they should laugh, as opposed
Yeah.
to just letting people laugh because the joke is good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's my big problem with laugh tracks too. Like it adds some charm to it, I guess, if you're coming from the other camp. I'm just trying to see the other sides here. It adds a little charm to it if like, one of your favorite characters says like, a funny line. But I do agree with I'm in the other camp where it's like holding an applause sign like to
Mhm.
the audience. Like I think like it just reminds me of I don't know, you see like the movie Shrek when like that guy turns the crowd in the audience and he's holding a sign that says laugh or like holding a sign that says like cheer. I just
Mhm.
think that's what they're doing for audiences when you're watching a sitcom. And I'm like,
Yeah.
don't tell me when to laugh. Like I'll laugh when it's funny, right? So
Hmm. And I guess like I mean, who knows? We haven't ever worked on like some sitcom in Hollywood, but I
mhm,
get it's odd also just the way they're filmed because they're in such like cheap and generic settings, like or the scenes because they're just these like cookie cutter rooms that they put together that a
mhm.
hundred shows have been filmed at those sets, right? They
Oh
just
yeah.
change like the couches and the paint color or whatever. Um,
Mhm,
so it's kind of strange. I think it kind of takes away from the overall show for the most part,
mhm.
in my opinion, when it's just the same thing over and over again. Like we talked about the Big Bang Theory. It's like for the first few seasons, they were in their apartment building just or they're in their apartment like all the time. Same with
Mhm.
Friends, right? Like
Yeah.
constantly in their apartment. As opposed to a show where it's filmed actually like outside of that set or whatever you would call it, like where there
Mhm,
is a live audience, like Modern Family or Always
mhm.
Sunny, that those sort of shows.
Yeah.
So I would agree. It's kind of just weird. It feels cheap to me a bit, like when they're filmed that way.
Yeah, it
Because
feels more
it's just
fabricated.
trying to,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. They're just trying to save money. Like that's why they're doing it. Like Big Bang Theory, the main people in the cast are making $1 million an episode. Same with
Mhm,
Friends, which like is fine if that's what you're worth. Good, like you should be paid what you're worth.
mhm.
I'm not saying the studio should just hoard all the money, which they already do, but you know what I mean. Like the actors and the crew should be paid what they deserve.
Mhm,
Um, but it's just like it's such a low budget for the actual like settings and props
mhm.
and stuff like that, as opposed to a show that was able to kind of
And
go to different areas.
yeah, and you notice too with these like the multicam sitcoms is they're on like it's like a flat plane, right? It's like they're walking across the room. They never kind of they go up and down stage like a literally like a stage, right? Like this. So there's no different locations like you said with like Modern Family and The Office. So you get very stagnant shots, and that's multicam, right? It's like this way, shooting in, and you can't get like really many other angles because it's like a
Mhm.
stage they're on. So.
Yeah, and I feel like one show, maybe it's just because I think of it higher than a lot of those other multicam sitcoms is like Seinfeld. I feel like
Mhm,
Seinfeld had a decent amount of different kind of sets they would use, but maybe
mhm.
I'm giving them too much credit. I mean, it's a great show, like no question. But
Oh yeah, it
just in
was one
terms
of
of
the
that, like
highest rated sitcoms of all
yeah,
time, man.
for sure. But I just mean like in terms of that multicam setup where there's only a couple locations. It's funny though because some of the low budget multicam sitcoms like that will literally only have one setting pretty much. Like I remember there was one show, it was on like Comedy Central. I think it was called Sullivan and Son, or is that the
Mhm.
band? I forget. It's like a
There's
pun.
Mumford and Sons is the band I think you're thinking of.
No, I know, but there's like another
Mhm,
band like
mhm,
that. Regardless, there's just this one show, and yeah, it's called Sullivan and Son. Every episode only takes place at the bar. Like every single episode
Cheap.
almost, no matter what, and nothing else, because obviously it wasn't like the highest budget, but they do have their merits. Like we mentioned, Seinfeld. I mean, that's one of the most well-written sitcoms of all time for
Mhm.
sure. Big Bang Theory was a huge show. I think How I
Yeah.
Met Your Mother is quite big with people our age for some reason, like with Netflix and that. Like specifically our age, I know a ton of people who've watched it and consider it like their favorite sitcom or one of them.
Mhm.
Even if it wasn't maybe the biggest at its time, like that it was running on air, I think it's benefited from the streaming, binge watching kind of market that we have now, like that
Mhm.
consumers use now. But let's move into kind of a different category of sitcom, the workplace comedy. Now, there are a couple of shows in this genre that are massive, but maybe let's start with one that's not quite as big. I haven't seen this show. I've seen it advertising that I've actually considered watching, and I probably will now. But maybe you could touch on the IT Crowd.
Yeah, this one was came to Netflix not too long ago. But what I like is the good thing about Netflix is they bring you things that you might not even see on your own, like cable
Mhm.
wise, right? So the IT Crowd is an English sitcom. So basically, just the premise is these two guys who are in the basement of this huge like corporation, and no one really knows they exist. They kind of treat them like they kind of people brush them aside. They're the IT crowd. They're the IT department. And the sitcom kicks off of this one woman who has no idea how to anything about computers. She has no idea how to operate them at all. Gets hired as their boss. So she just it's funny because like the first couple episodes you see her trying to like figure out just lie to them, be like, yeah, I know how computers work and stuff, and that's just the basis
Mhm.
of it. But it's like there are not many seasons, quick episodes because it's that's the English style of
Yeah, they don't
um,
do the 100 episode shows like
mm,
America does sometimes with like some of the big sitcoms,
mm,
which that can take us to the mother of all sitcom and especially the mother of all workplace comedies, which is The Office. Now, let's start though with the British Office, which, like you mentioned, in terms of less episodes, the whole British Office is only like 2 seasons, which they call series, not
mm,
seasons.
yep,
Um, and it's like 6 episodes a season, something like that. Yet
yeah, yeah.
it was like an iconic and massive show in England and still here too. Like a lot of people do watch it and like it. A lot of people who've watched the British Office will actually say it's better, even though there's less episodes. It just packs a bit more punch.
Mm,
And it's funny because the American Office, the first season, in particular, the first episode was like a shot for shot, almost word for word remake of the pilot of the British Office.
yeah,
So
and
it's strange if you go from watching one to the other.
and it was weird because I watched the American version first, and then I watched the English version, and I was like, "Whoa, this is shot for shot," but it's the original was the English, so
Mhm.
it's kind of funny to see that, and it
Yeah.
was for English humor. Like the reason it was like adapted for the States and made differently, longer like longer seasons and different kind of humors because English humor doesn't land with a lot of Americans or like the
Mhm.
North American audience as I love English humor. That's like
Mhm.
I grew up watching Mr. Bean and and like a lot of English TV, so I love it. But
I don't
to,
know
to
if
try,
Mr. Bean is the best example.
oh no, I know, but
No,
it's just
no.
like the way
Mr.
it's
Bean's
done.
great. No, Mr. Bean's great for sure. I just mean like if someone was like, well, I like the British Office, like liking
Like
Mr.
Mr.
Bean would have no like everyone likes Mr. Bean. Don't get me wrong.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
not trying to drag Mr. Bean. It's just like Mr. Bean is like goofy, kind of like physical humor, because obviously he doesn't
yeah,
talk. But like where's the British Office? It's like The Office, but turned up to 10 in terms of like the awkwardness and the
yeah.
quietness, and you're just kind of watching and there's these long pauses and stuff, and then the jokes land, and like I would say you don't laugh out loud maybe as much as the British Office, like at its
Mhm,
when it was firing on all cylinders in the first like the 2 3 or like season 2 3 4 sort of.
mhm.
But I would say like it pays off in terms of like you're just thinking like, oh my gosh, like this is just hysterical. Like afterwards, it like has that lasting kind of comedy. But yeah, let's talk about the American version because that's obviously the one most people know, at least in our neck of the woods on this side of the pond. And obviously, I think it went 8 seasons or 9 seasons,
I
one
think it
or
was
the
nine
other,
seasons. Yeah, it went nine, I
8 or
believe.
9. And it's the first season was very strange. It didn't have many episodes, and it almost got canceled. Like it was quite dry and kind of
Mm.
boring, other than the Diversity Day episode, which is ridiculous,
That was a
absolutely
good one.
ridiculous. Oh my god!
Mhm.
But other than that episode, the first season's kind of forgettable, wouldn't you say? Like there's
Yeah,
not that many episodes, and
There's a
And
pilot
Steve
season,
Carell
I'd
didn't have
say.
hair. It was weird.
Yeah, the receding hairline. It was the pilot season, because I think what they did is they did it more of the English version. So you had a
Yes.
lot of like that, the dry wit and the like the cringy kind of pauses and stuff. I don't think it translated as well with like test groups maybe. So they kind of geared it towards American audiences being more like
Mhm.
the American like humor.
Yeah.
Um, but they still kept the cringe in, which I know some people who can't watch it. Like they're like, I can't watch The Office, Alex, because it's just so like, cringy, and just I feel weird watching it. And I'm like, dude, that's why I love it. It's just hilarious to
Yeah.
watch, like laugh at these characters. So
Yeah, for sure. And then like season two, I feel like that's when it takes off, and it's like from there it was just like probably like just I mean it's become the biggest sitcom for sure, like
mhm,
workplace comedy kind of thing. I mean, I don't even know what really needs to be said. I feel like everything that needs to be said about The Office has been said. Probably
mhm,
too much has been said about The Office because it's one of my favorite sitcoms, maybe my favorite sitcom. Yet the just the kind of pop culture effect it has had is too
mhm.
substantial.
So all
Like
the references
it's
everywhere. Yeah.
ridiculous. So many references, and like a few years ago, like you'd see people put it in like their dating bio, like their Tinder sort of stuff. Just like
I had a friend
relax,
do I
like
had a friend do that. It's like, hey, come over and watch The Office with me. And
yeah.
that was his bio. I was like, interesting. Okay, man. Sure.
And like, and at the time it was normal. And like, I'm not like, if you do that, like, it's no big deal. Like, we're not trying to like shame anyone
No,
for having
no.
their interest. It's just like people just like made it such a big part of their personality and their life when it's like, it is just a TV show as much as like we love TV and film, and I was ridiculed in university for liking a particular show, maybe a little too much. I don't know if you remember. The initials are BB, if you recall.
Yeah.
And we'll
Yeah.
we'll probably talk about that show in a future episode. And if you go to our TikTok, we've made several videos about the program. But
You're
yeah,
not going to
let's
disclose it here, are you,
digress.
man? Let's move.
Let's digress from the glory days
Mm.
at university. But yeah, I mean, The Office is just it's hilarious. So many good characters. You know what? I just thought of this. Spontaneous. The Office character draft. I didn't tell you we were doing this. I didn't think we were doing
Oh,
this,
okay.
but let's just do it. Let's do three picks. Like, let's not get crazy and start drafting like, you know, Nelly from season 9 or whatever,
Yeah, just the core group that's
or
been
the
there. Okay.
IT guy Nate, just like kind of the main group of
Yeah.
7 or however many it was.
Mhm.
Let's go 3 picks each. You get first pick since I just sprung it up on you. I literally just thought of it right now. I wasn't planning on
Okay.
doing this, but so
I'd
let's do
say
Office character draft. You go first.
okay, Dwight.
Do I with the first
Dwight
pick?
has to be one of my favorite first pick.
I think that had to go number one. I agree. I'll take the other kind of obvious. I will go Michael Scott.
Scott. Who else? Do you know who's a very like who I when I watched it again, who had really hilarious comments? Phyllis.
Yes.
Phyllis is like when I first started watching it, like I was I guess most of the attention was on Dwight and Michael, and then
Hmm.
I was watching it again recently, and just
No,
Phyllis
she's
is
hilarious.
hilarious.
She's so passive aggressive, and then she'll just be
That's
like almost like just say something that's like racist or something, just
yeah,
out of
just
nowhere,
just
like
out of
for no
nowhere, she'll
reason,
like
unprovoked, nothing. It's just ridiculous. But that's
especially when
part
she
of why
interacts
it's
with
so
Angela.
good.
Yeah,
That's part of
yeah,
why it's so good, though, is like it kind of is like real people who have flaws and are awkward and
yeah,
mean at times or selfish, and that's kind of what's good about it. But second pick, who do you
yeah.
got?
Second pick, I would have to say. So I put Phyllis as my third, but second would be Creed.
Well, we're going back and forth, so you don't know
You're
if Phyllis is going to be there.
you're right. No, okay. I'm gonna go Creed then for my second, because
Creed number
Creed
two.
is every scene he's in. He's not in it often, but when he's in it, he
Yeah.
steals the scene every single
Yeah.
time. Like the most notable one I remember is when he walked. It was the murder mystery thing, and he
Mhm.
came in with like blood all over his shirt, and he's like, "Hey, boss, what's going on? What I miss?" And he's like, "There's
Yeah.
been a murder, and you're a
Yeah.
suspect." Oh no, he didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't have blood there. But
No,
then
I think
he's like,
he might have, yeah. But
I
either
know it's
way, yeah.
Halloween he had it, but yeah, either way,
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, okay, boss, I'll be right back. I'm just getting something for my car," and then he just like leaves,
Yeah.
just like dips
There's
out.
so many scenes like that. I remember even when this is a later season when they take the work bus and remember they take the work bus and they're for some reason they go to get like a pot, like go to a pie stand
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they're going along and then they stop and pick up a hitchhiker with like one of those old timey hats. And he's like playing hooky from work today. And then he like walks into the bus. He's like, "You've got to be kidding me!"
Yeah.
On the side of the highway. There you go. But yeah, classic. Good second pick. I
Yeah.
like that we're not just going super generic.
Mhm.
So with my second pick, I will go Stanley.
Stanley.
Stanley. I love
Yes.
Stanley. Um, I would say he fits into that. Like that's the thing. You have the main characters, obviously Jim, Pam, Dwight, Michael, Andy
Mhm.
as well.
Mhm.
But those kind of secondary characters, not like Phyllis, Angela, Oscar, Kevin, Stan, like they're so
Yeah.
distinct and unique. That's what makes The Office so good. Is they're like we're going to talk about kind of tropes of sitcoms. They didn't really have a clear cut trope, I would say. Like obviously there are aspects of it. It's not like they just reinvented the whole genre, but there's no like clear kind of remake of Kramer or something like other shows have done in the
Yeah.
past. And so a character like Stanley, again, like he just personifies the office as being just like regular people. Like Stanley, he gets in at 9, he leaves at 5. He loves pretzel day. He
Yeah.
doesn't put up with any bullshit, like that's what regular people in an office are like. There's someone like that. And so I love Stanley. I will go with him with my second pick. Now,
Mhm.
who do you got with your final pick?
Final pick. I'm struggling between two characters, but I'd have to go with Phyllis, and then I'll tell you my honorable mention. But just
Mhm.
like we said about Phyllis, that's why I really like her.
Yeah. With my third pick, ooh, how do I go? I mean, the obvious one is Jim. That's the obvious
Mm.
one we haven't drafted yet. Do I go with I'm debating between two, and I'll tell you who after I make my pick. Oh,
Well, if you tell me the other
it's
one, then
tough.
then y'all
It's
know.
tough.
So,
With my third pick, I will go with Ryan.
Ryan.
Ryan. Ryan. I was choosing between Andy and
Yeah.
Ryan.
Mm.
Again, both just ridiculous characters, and particularly Ryan. That's why I picked Ryan. He's just such a piece of work.
And he's all
Like
over the board. Most like
he
he's
is
one season he's
oh
like this, then he's like this, and
he's such a good character. Again, like not good that like you like him necessarily or he's a good
mm.
person, but just so well written and like you see him in all these different scenarios. It's like he's like that friend of yours that's into some weird stuff or like just changes his personality every 6 months based on what book he read or what movie he watched or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, and that's what ultimately gave him the edge. But I was choosing between him and Andy. I actually like Andy. I think he's funny and kind of relatable in the sense just that like he's so like insecure all
Just
the time
insecure, just the goofy guy trying to make light of everything, but he's like,
and needs attention, always singing, unprovoked. And obviously he had anger issues in the first couple of seasons, but there's so many to
yeah.
choose from. But I would say my honorable mention would have been Andy. So let's recap.
Yeah.
I took Michael, Stanley,
Yep.
and Ryan. You took Creed, or sorry,
So it's Dwight,
Dwight.
Creed, and Phyllis. My honorable
Perfect.
mention is David Wallace.
Okay.
And it's only because like he is like the kind of average manager office worker, and so just him dealing with Michael's BS all the time. Because
Mhm.
imagine like just I can just imagine myself in David Wallace's shoes, where you're like going about your day, and then you have to deal with this like dumbass like Michael
Yeah.
Scott, and just he sits there because he shows up. He basically shows up in a situation. He's like, "What the fuck is going on?" Like that's David
Mhm.
Wallace. So he
Yeah.
kind of like just walk into situations. So
Well,
that's
and
what I
I've
love about
seen
it.
like some stuff on like social media and that about David Wallace where it's like he is the most patient and like nice CFO in the history of business because
Yeah.
for like the BS he put up with Michael is so funny. And that's kind of what's perfect about The Office. I remember Stanley actually mentioned this when Michael did something. I forget exactly what it was. Where he was like, "Is Michael some sort of secret genius?" And then he's like, ha, 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 "Sometimes I make myself laugh or whatever." But that's the
Yeah.
thing about Michael is like he screws up so much, but then in like certain key moments, you'll see that he actually is good at his job at times and creative. Like
Yeah.
one scene in particular that reminds me of, I think it was season two. It was either season one or season two. I think it was season two when he goes to Chili's with Jan and the paper rep from the school district or whatever it
Yep. I
was.
was about to bring that up.
And
That was a good one. Yep.
and so they go to the restaurant and Jan's like trying to get to business right away. And Michael's like, settle down, like calm down, whatever. and he gets him like to drink and get comfortable and have a meal and
Yeah.
everything. And then right at the end, he kind of does the pitch in a very
Yeah.
casual way, and it sealed the deal and it was perfect. And that's one of those times where you're like, you know what? Now you understand why Michael is still around, because he probably just met the barrier of what would have been a good job, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, and that's I love him as a character, and that's like uh, you don't see many characters like him in sitcoms. Like you see the goofy characters, but he has the
Yeah,
kind of like he's a very unique character. That's why I guess The
I
Office is
agree.
just like
I would say
yeah.
the only other character I could compare him to, and we'll get this is the perfect way to transition, is another workplace comedy, and I would say Leslie Knope from Parks
Mhm.
and Rec. Amy Poehler's character is
Yeah.
similar to Michael Scott in that she's goofy. They're not the exact same though, because she's not incompetent like Michael Scott,
Michael.
and she's not like sometimes Michael was like selfish and like kind of mean to people sometimes, like
Oh yeah.
and whereas Leslie Knope is like very pure and always wants to do good for others. But Parks and Rec, very similar to The Office in terms of the way it's shot and everything.
Mhm.
Even though like the subject matter is different, I like Parks and Rec. When I first watched it, I really liked it. Similar to The Office, but still good and definitely unique in its own way. Have you seen Parks and Rec or not really?
I tried getting into it. Again, for whatever reason, I didn't, but
Mm-hmm.
I've heard good things about it. And
Yeah.
Ron Swanson, that's the guy I know
Yeah.
most about the clip because I've seen clips of him and stuff. Like the favorite one is the vegan bacon scene where he's like, "Hey,
Yeah.
here's some vegan bacon." He's like, "Thank you." Throws it in the garbage.
Yeah.
Another, please.
Yeah, for sure. And that's like it's
Yeah.
a bit like The Office, Parks and Rec, where like the characters are very unique, but also you can see like how they represent just like average people,
Mhm.
like in a workplace. And that's kind of why those shows are better than a lot of the other ones and have kind of stood the test of time. And then the last
Mhm.
show, quickly just wanted to mention in that genre would be Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Mhm.
That has like a pretty significant cult following. It's like a cop show, but mainly just a comedy. And I like it for sure. I think a lot of people, like younger people, enjoy the show. And but I wouldn't put it in the same category as The Office and Parks and Rec in terms of like the writing and maybe how critically acclaimed it is. But it
Mhm.
had a lot of seasons, and definitely its fan base loves the show. So I guess we could, unless you had something to add to that, we could move on to kind of the dramedy genre, if you will. So these are
Mhm.
shows, maybe not dramedy, maybe comedy with a hint of real life, almost drama, you
Yeah,
know?
I'd say these have a more of an overarching stories, I'd
Yeah,
say, rather than like more very episodic, like the multi-cam sitcom and like the workplace comedies, they were more episodic and had a little bit of like an overarching thing. But
mhm,
in these, you have more overarching stuff I find in these kind of shows.
for sure. So I guess we could just start with Modern Family, which
Mhm.
I think we agree on this. I'd actually consider it a bit underrated, even though the ratings were quite good. I feel like people don't bring it up
I,
when
mhm.
they talk about best sitcoms, but I really enjoy it. I must say I really like the show.
This is one of my favorite sitcoms actually, and it's funny because no one really mentions it because I guess the big button ones at the time were How I Met Your Mother and Friends when I was
Well, and
like
like
growing
Big
up,
Bang,
and
right?
Big
Big
Bang,
Bang
like those are the
Theory.
huge, again, the multi-cam sitcoms ones. But Modern Family was, I think, the first sitcom I actually grew up watching. Like I remember sitting down and watching it when I was younger because it came out in like
Same.
2010, I think, or
Yeah, like
2011.
2000, yeah, like 2010 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so I grew up watching the show. Like I don't think I didn't sit down every like Thursday night or something and watch it. It was just I saw so many reruns, and I eventually started watching it by like the ninth or tenth season, like episode by episode. But for those first like nine seasons, I remember just watching the show with my family a lot, like reruns all the time until we seen them all. And it's great because like it's a great show about family and the family dysfunction, and
Hmm.
everybody can relate to that to some degree because we all have some kind of family in any
Hmm.
way, shape, or form, and that's what this show like shows the modern family, where like it doesn't necessarily have traditional family, nuclear family kind of thing, right? You have um, I'm just trying to think of like all different characters. You had
Oh,
different
I mean,
kind of
well,
like
there's like three different
like
families, right? Like you
exactly,
have,
and
and the cool thing is it's called Modern Family, and part of that is like it talks about modern life, but also just like the structure of the family. Like you kind of have
mhm,
the one family, which would be the air quotes conventional or like traditional
It's
family
interesting. Yeah.
of like Phil, Claire, and the three kids, Haley, Alex, Luke.
Mhm.
Then you have Claire's brother Mitchell, who's gay, married to Cam, and then they have
Mhm.
a adopted daughter Lily. And then you
Mhm.
have Jay, who's Claire's dad and Mitchell's dad, who's remarried to a much younger woman. And
Younger than his
then,
daughter.
yeah, younger than his
Yeah.
daughter. And then their son Manny. And so I think that's kind of a cool aspect, just in that like you see kind of different families and how like even though families may not be the exact same structure or whatever, as long this is extremely cheesy, but I just think it's part of the show. What they were trying to do is just show like even if a family's untraditional or like maybe a little bit like not perfectly well run or anything like that, as long as there's like love and respect in that, like it's
It makes it go
perfectly fine.
around. Yeah.
Sorry?
It makes it go around. You just need love
Yeah,
in the family. And
for
that's
sure.
what I love, because like actually, like I know, again, hitting on the cheesy points, but at the end of each episode you had one character, and mostly at the beginning it was Jay and Phil who did like a narration at the end about like the messaging and the themes about it.
Hmm.
So what I love is like it relates to everybody, because it's a like family dynamics, because you get the younger generation, you get so you get the kids, the parents, and like Jay is like the grandfather, right? So it's like
Hmm.
times, like they're all melding together with like the different times coming together for
for,
generations. So
for sure. And then like another show that kind of fits into that um group in terms of a comedy, but actually has kind of a plot and storyline throughout would be Arrested Development, which the
mhm.
first couple seasons are hilarious and ridiculous.
Yeah,
But one thing with Arrested Development is like they did two or three seasons, maybe even just two, and they like came back, did another, and then came back, did another, and now there's like four or five.
they did one
But
like 10
really,
years later, right?
yeah, but really it's
Yeah.
just those original couple that were really good, and those couple seasons would rival some of the other top shows for sure.
Mhm.
And just like
No,
ridiculous characters, like Tobias is just hysterical. That guy, oh
he was
my,
my favorite in the show. He was hilarious.
yeah, he is just he's ridiculous.
And
But
Job as well.
yeah, Joe,
Job,
Will Arnett, and
the failed musician. I was our
mhm,
magician.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I mean, that one's cool also because it's kind of a unique show. Like it'd be hard to kind of describe it to someone in terms of like trying to give another show as a reference. It's kind of just
mhm.
weird. Like get ready to be weird. And what a cast! Like Will Arnett,
Yeah. Mhm.
Jason Bateman,
Yeah, that's
Michael
it. Jason Bateman.
Cera, and the dad. I don't know his name. He's been in a lot of stuff, as well as the mom as well. She's been in a lot
Mm,
of different shows and movies. So pretty stacked cast for sure. But let's get to another one that fits into that kind of group because we wanted to kind of put them in kind of chunks.
mhm,
Because not all comedy shows are the exact same, right? Different styles and formats. And
mhm.
then this one is maybe our favorite in this group, that or Modern Family, but that would be Community. And
Yeah.
one thing about Community, I watched it when I was young, like I was like 14 or something when I watched it on Netflix, and I liked it then, but then I started rewatching it when I was older, and it was so much better because I actually understood a lot more of the references in the show.
Oh, and they're so subtle. That's what I love about this show. Like it's hands down my favorite sitcom. I was talking to Al about this. Al was our guest on the Batman episode,
Hmm.
and I think it's our favorite sitcom of all time, because it's like a love letter to movie buffs
Hmm.
and to cinema itself, because every episode has some kind of like homage to either directing style, content, like the style, sorry, the uh, like the situation in the episode, or like straight up lines like lifted from other movies into it. And it's just the parodies. Like the whole show is just a comedy
Yeah.
about a group of mismatched people. Like even that's kind of a sitcom trope in itself, that they're going to play with that. It's a bunch of unlikely friends in a school, just parodies of movies and shows the entire time.
Yeah.
And so yeah, when you know more, like you said, Mitch, you had more appreciation after like a few
Hmm.
years, because you learn more about other movies and shows, and you're like, oh, that was from that movie. So
Hmm. For sure.
yeah.
And yeah, like they have lots of references and it's very satirical. Um,
Mhm.
but also like you kind of care about the characters and that. And another thing they do is like they'll have episodes where they're kind of like those not parody, oh I guess parodies of like movies, right? Like they had like a Star Wars episode kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
When they had the paintball, they had like a Western movie, like a
Hmm.
spaghetti Western, and then they also did like a mob movie with the
Yeah, with
chicken
chicken
fingers.
fingers. Yeah.
So it's just super creative, and I totally
Yeah.
agree. Just like a super creative show, and definitely anyone who like loves movie and kind of appreciates writing in a comedy show would enjoy Community, even though it's a bit strange. Definitely should give it a chance. At least like the first four seasons with the main cast and that.
Yeah, and
Um,
yeah,
because the last couple seasons it's a little bit odd, like with a different cast and that.
there's a lot of behind the scenes drama going on there.
For
Uh,
sure,
the
for
Chevy
sure.
Chase, and
Yeah,
it unfortunate that happened, but it was,
yeah,
yeah, a great show. If you haven't
for
seen it, check
sure.
it out because
Hmm.
again, it's a very slept on comedy in my
Yeah.
opinion. Because like people talk about the big like multi-cam sitcoms, but Community
Hmm.
kind of falls by the wayside because it's kind of has more of like a cult following.
Yeah, and it
So
got like canceled. Like the ratings were not good. Like the last season or two were on like Yahoo
yeah,
streaming, which
and they're
no
filming a
longer
movie now.
exists.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly, and they're doing a movie right now though.
Yeah,
They
and
confirmed it. So
that Community is definitely one of those shows that has like a big cult following, not a big following, a big cult following.
yeah.
But definitely check it out. And NBC, if you want us to keep promoting Community for your streaming services and all that, just send us over a DM and we'll keep going with an
And we'll get a
offer.
cameo. That's
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
for
100%.
sure. So yeah, and then to finish off kind of the different kind of groups of comedy shows, and obviously there's some we would have missed, but we couldn't cover all of them. We just want to kind of cover the main ones of the genres we identified. It would be the animated comedy, and I would say two in particular. I would say definitely fit into the sitcom category, even though they are animated and they're able to do more things because of that creatively and with like scenes and characters. And that would be The Simpsons and Family Guy. Now I know you're a Simpsons guy, so maybe you could start us off with that because I haven't seen much of the show. I'll be honest.
Well, Simpsons, I started watching it later in like quarantine actually during like 2020. That's what I kind of watched it a little bit, but not too much. I was more of a Family Guy. Uh,
Okay, yeah, I'm
as
the
my
same.
Family Guy. So that was you. So like I think Simpsons started obviously way before our generation.
Yeah,
Um, and it's
Simpsons.
lost its steam apparently after I've heard after like their 10th season kind of thing in like the 80s, like the 90s was like that was their heyday. And
Mhm.
then in like the early now it's like it's still good apparently. I've seen the Simpsons movie, loved it. Um, I like the dynamic of the characters. I just I haven't seen the show as like I haven't watched enough, I guess.
Yeah. And I'm the same with Family Guy. I feel like a lot of people our age are because we were kind of around for Family Guy's peak, or maybe we're a bit young, but still are like, it was
We
in
watched it. We watched it.
the popular conscience kind of thing, in the zeitgeist, if you will. Word of the day. Um, Unlike The Simpsons, which when it was in its heyday was before our time. So I think Family Guy is kind of that animated show, animated adult comedy of our generation. And I think it fits into the sitcom category just because you kind of have the formula of like a family, and then you have like the bar that they go to, the clam and that. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty hilarious. Like, obviously, again, like Community, they have those episodes where they do a spoof on something like a Star
Yeah.
Wars one, whatever, and they're definitely satire. Like they would
Yeah, 100%.
like they do everything. They do pop culture, they do politics, whatever. They don't care. They'll make fun of anyone, like which is hilarious.
Yeah, and the show's been sued multiple times by
Yeah,
people who like it was other actors and artists who like couldn't take it, right? I guess like they were making fun of them and then they're like, I don't like how you made fun of me there, so I'm gonna go after you. Because they've been canceled, I think, twice now, Family Guy.
like on Fox
They've been canceled after the first season they got canceled, I
for
think.
sure. Yeah.
I think it was either ratings or I think it was someone was like suing.
I'm guessing it
And then
was probably
yeah,
rating because like if the ratings were big enough, you don't care. So it's probably a mix of both, right? Like,
yeah, there's definitely another lawsuit. There was like I think two people were after them.
Oh yeah,
I
I'm
guess
not
the user
surprised. I mean,
likeliness or something.
they did like a Putin episode and like a Trump episode. Like they did
Yeah,
anything. Like they'd make fun of Bush and like Obama,
yeah,
whoever. Like that's just like the way they roll. But
yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, and then the other one, another anime show that's huge. Again, kind of among people probably like under 30, would be Rick and Morty, which I haven't seen. You've seen Rick and Morty though. You gotta touch
Yeah.
on it a bit.
So this is the same creator as Community. So Dan Harmon. So what happens is if you love the raunchy sitcom, like if you like Family Guy, it was a little bit of like edge, a little bit of raunchiness to it. This is ramp it up to 11. Like this is just full blown raunchy. I'd say it's kind of a parody on Back to the Future because you see like an old scientist
Mm.
with like the young naive kid, and they're going on crazy adventures. But it's just no bars held back, just very raunchy comedy. Like it's Adult Swim, right? That's
Yeah, yeah.
the program on. So
It's
I'd
made
say
for stoners like
it's made
you,
for stoners. Yeah,
Yeah.
you get the wacky sci-fi. So I
Yeah,
say if you check out Community and you like that, you will definitely like Rick and Morty.
for sure.
Say that.
Well, I feel like we've covered a lot of sitcoms. Definitely gone in depth. That's for
Mhm.
sure. So let's maybe talk about our like the most or just one that comes to mind, overrated sitcom and then an underrated sitcom. How about you give us your most overrated sitcom? And I have a feeling I know what you might answer with.
Do you want to guess what I'm thinking?
How about you just say it and then I'll tell you if I had it or not.
Friends.
Yes. That's what I was
Friends. I have to
uh,
say, and
yeah.
I'm sorry, people love that show religiously.
Mhm.
I enjoyed it the first time through. I am sad to say that I've watched it many times through. Just it was a very comfort show, and that's the thing about Friends. It was a very big comfort show. Like I remember, like while I eat or something, I threw it in the background. I know a lot of people do that too.
Mhm.
I stopped doing it because I first watched it when I was 13. I think that was my first introduction to Friends, and I really enjoyed it. Like it was just like you said, it's just people living their life, and drama and comedy ensues, and you just get wrapped up in it, and it's easy to relate to some characters there. But the amount of times it's been just like clubbed over my head with friends, like people saying like, "Oh, Friends, great show." They even did a friend union thing.
Mhm.
So, and that's the thing why I think it's overrated. Because, Mitch, can you tell me any other sitcom that can do like a reunion show and people would just like, flock to it?
Definitely not to the level that Friends did it.
Mhm.
And also, like, I didn't watch that reunion, but it seemed kind of odd because they were just like in regular people, like they were just like the regular people, like they were like Courtney Cox, Jennifer Aniston. It wasn't like I don't think it was an episode of Friends or anything like that.
No, it was like an hour
Like
like a
documentary
documentary movie
coffee
thing.
shop thing, um,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, and I feel like Friends is maybe the biggest sitcom of all time, but also I feel like it might be the most common answer to most overrated sitcom, partly because of
Mhm.
that. You can't really be overrated if no one likes it. So to be overrated is actually a compliment, I would say, in a
Yeah.
sense, because if Friends wasn't so big and you just watched it on your own and liked it, you probably wouldn't have, people wouldn't have such strong feelings about it, right? But because
Mhm.
it's so big and constantly brought up in conversations and pop culture and that, and it wasn't like, the greatest thing ever. The writing wasn't the best, I wouldn't say.
Mhm.
I think that's definitely that's why it's kind of considered overrated. And I agree. Like it definitely wouldn't be underrated. That's for damn
Yeah.
sure.
And before we get to like your most overrated, I just want
Mhm,
to say Friends had the reason I guess a lot of people are really into it is because like the timeless humor. Because I know
mhm.
some sitcoms don't survive the test of time,
Yeah.
but Friends like they didn't do a lot of cultural specific or time specific jokes.
Mhm.
So it was very cool. They had the very general situations that just don't involve certain time restricting
Yeah.
references. And so
Yeah.
they did have those, but that's why it's timeless humor, which
Yeah.
that's why it
Like,
survived.
I mean, I was gonna say, it's just like friends, and I didn't even mean that as a joke,
Just
but
like friends.
it's like friendship and just like it's like casual friendship and relationships kind of. So it's
Mhm,
still, it's still you can watch it and it doesn't feel like you're watching something ancient, like some comedy shows.
mhm.
Now for my overrated sitcom, this is a bit of a hot take. Let me be clear. This is maybe my favorite sitcom. It's right up there. So don't think of this as me hating on it. It's just overrated, meaning it gets too much publicity and too much credit for what it is, even though it's one of my favorites, maybe my favorite sitcom, and that is The Office.
Hmm.
The Office. And when I think of overrated, I could have said like Big Bang Theory because that was a massive ratings sitcom.
Hmm.
But I think most people who are kind of, TV people, like people who really watch TV and think about it kind of critically, um, in terms of deciphering what's quality and what isn't. I don't think many people think the Big Bang Theory. I think the first few seasons were good. Um,
Hmm.
but overall as a show, just like repetitive and kind of bland and not much to it. So like
Hmm.
I wouldn't say a show like that would be overrated. And then I'd never say a show that like doesn't have a big enough audience, right? So I feel like The Office works for this, like Friends, because we mentioned it already. Just like the pop culture footprint, if you will, is just massive. Like it's constantly talked about. Trivia, people watch it on loop nonstop, which I did too when I was in high school. I'll be honest, it was one of
Hmm.
those things, like
And just
but
the quoting alone.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And it's not The Office's fault. I'm not nothing on the writers or the actors, anything like that. It's not the show's fault. It's like a band. It's like when a band gets too big or a song, and then
Hmm.
the song becomes annoying, right? It's like
But it's good though. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
It's a good
it's like
song, but it's overplayed,
it's like
right?
Blinding Lights by The Weekend. If you had never heard that song and I just played it for you, you'd be like, "Oh, that's a good song. That's cool." Like kind of
Yeah.
80s sound. You don't really hear that much now. But it has like 4 billion streams on Spotify and was played constantly. So no one is going to be like really like the song anymore, right? And
Hmm.
that's not the Weekend's fault, you know. It's just like it gets grabbed by everything and then it's just shoved down, like
Yeah.
it's just like they hit you over the head with it, right? And that's kind of what I think The Office was like.
And that like quick note on that is we're a generation of streamers, or sorry, bingers. So
Mm-hmm.
with The Office, people can just binge and binge, and that's why just like it can lose its, I'd say, value in a sense. Like you say, it was overrated because people are binging it, talk about it all the time. Whereas now, some shows still do this. They do the weekly, like
Mm-hmm.
episodic release and stuff like that, which I think's the best because
Same.
then you get something to wait for, and you're savoring it kind of more so than just like digesting it all and then being overplayed and then not talked about again.
Mm-hmm.
That's how can I see
Yeah,
that?
I agree. All right, now let's go to a bit more positive. Let's go underrated, a show that doesn't get enough credit. I'll take the first pick this time.
Hmm.
And I'll go with maybe an unpopular pick because it did do well ratings wise and it isn't really considered one of the top kind of comedies based on the writing. Like I've seen it get a little bit of hate online in that, but I love it and I know you love it too. We already talked about it, but I will go Modern Family
Hmm.
because it's never in the conversation for best sitcoms like of this kind of generation. Not that I've seen really at least. And I think it deserves it. I just think it's a really well done show, incredibly satisfying. You kind of feel good when you watch it because there's always kind of like a life lesson,
Yeah.
at the end, like you mentioned. And the characters, there's something about each character you like and something about each character you don't like, right? Like they all
Hmm.
have their merits and their faults, and that's real life. So I'll go Modern Family, just a bit underrated, not in terms of how many people have seen it, because I think it did well commercially, but just how it's thought of within
Yeah.
these other comedy shows. So what would be your most underrated? Or unless you had something to add on Modern Family.
Well, I was saying Modern Family. What I liked about is you said merits and their faults. I saw that was one of the only sitcoms where the characters grew a lot. Like they not only did the kids physically grow up and stuff, but like their characters changed a lot, which I enjoyed. Like for example, like Haley, she was that very like superficial kind of like good looking high school girl who like got her way a lot and stuff like that. And then she
Mm-hmm.
kind of like then she grew and she like was growing romances with like Andy, the guy. And I love that storyline. You just see them change. And Manny too. Like Manny was starting to be more like less
What a
of like
guy.
that kind of sophisticated, like grown up kind of kid, where he just kind of learned to be a kid. And
Yeah.
also just Haley was my crush growing up. Of course, I was like 10 years old watching it, and I was like, Haley, oh my god.
Yeah.
So yeah, but underrated sitcom.
Yeah.
Um, I would say Scrubs.
Really? I thought you were gonna say Community.
I was gonna say Community, because I mentioned it before.
But
I'd say
that's a good one
Community.
though. That's a
Yeah,
good
I'd say
one.
Community is probably the most underrated sitcom I can talk about. But Scrubs was enjoyable, and what I think was cool, it stood out to me a little bit because the show is, if no one knows about the show, It's a sitcom based around a hospital, but it's not like a drama. They play on some tropes like that, like the medical drama, but it's a comedy about um, doctors and nurses in the hospital. And what I think they do well is the cutaway scenes. Like, some like Family Guys are cutaway scenes, right? And it's like kind of over the top, goofy stuff. They do that with the actors in like costumes and stuff. There'll be like an
Hmm.
over the top thing where someone's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be this doctor's verbal punching bag today." Then it cuts to a scene where it's just like it's over the top, flashing lights. The guy's in a body bag and the doctor's beating the crap out of him. Like you just see like cool cutaways like that. It's kind of funny where they do
Yeah,
well. So I'd say check it out. So
for sure. Yeah, and I mean that's obviously like a unique premise. You don't see a lot of shows that are comedic shows based around like hospitals and that, especially with all the serious ones around nowadays. Um, but yeah, that's kind of a perfect way to end it, except we have a little treat. Everyone loves a draft. We already did one spontaneously. I didn't think we were going to do it. Like I hadn't
yeah.
planned on it. But now we have a planned one. Let's do our top three sitcoms. I'll take the first pick this time.
Mhm. Go
I
ahead.
will go Seinfeld,
Seinfeld.
the first
Okay,
pick.
very good. Uh, First pick, I'd have to say Community.
Wow.
I have to say that for
Okay.
first pick, for my very first
I
pick. Yeah.
like that. No, I like that. I would have liked to have gotten it in mine.
Mhm.
Ooh, I'll go. I mean, I guess I'll just go boring answer and go The Office. Just a
The
boring
Office.
answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, it's up
But
there. You
it's
said it's one of
great.
your
It's
favorites.
great. So,
I,
I mean,
I was surprised Seinfeld beat that out. Actually,
mhm.
uh, I'd say for second. Oh, because we've been talking about it a lot and realize how good the show is. Modern Family.
Okay.
I say Modern
Yeah.
Family's up there with me. Yeah, yeah.
With my third pick, uh, uh, doesn't even, I don't even know if it necessarily even counts, but I'll pick it. Family Guy with my third pick.
Mm-hmm. No, it's good. A different animated comedy. There you go. I
Yeah.
still will always love Family Guy.
Hmm.
Uh, and my third and final one. Oh, what is thinking? Oh, I'm still watching the show right now. But what is hilarious is Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Is that your pick?
That's my pick. I'd say for
Perfect.
right now, it may change, but right now that's probably my third right
That's a solid three. So I
now.
had Seinfeld, The Office, Family Guy, and you had.
Community, Modern Family, and Always Sunny.
That's good. I like how, some different picks, obviously some conventional ones as well, but
Get a
I think that's
variety too.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, we got into a lot of detail. We discussed a lot of shows. I think that's a good place to leave it. So if you enjoyed the show, check us out on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at Podcast M&M.